There was chaos in the area, everyone panicked. No one knew what to do next, but suddenly a daredevil appeared who decided to attack his enemies alone, but apparently in vain. Because after all this, he was captured by them. Attacking there were elves. The elves were rumored to be beautiful and elegant, and those who were able to escape from them said that they caught them to try. They tasted their liquids and then thought to sell. In an attempt to catch the commander, one of the elf clan wanted to play with the commander, but he was able to successfully get out and try to attack the elf. Unfortunately, his attempt was in vain, because her friends were nearby who saved her. Realizing that there were too many opponents, the commander decided to tactically surrender. They wanted to take the commander to the auction in order to sell it. On the way to the auction, the commander carefully thought over the escape plan and examined the keys that the elf had in the thigh area. Noticing this, the elf stopped the transport and left it for a while of reflection and negotiations with her comrades. Then the commander noticed the mountains and other people that the elves had caught. Then he realized that he must be being taken to the elven capital, which is called Reveria. In the capital of the elves, the main purpose of kidnappings is reproduction. Since the elves have a very strange gender distribution, 80% of the elves are women, so they make up for the lack of men with slaves. After these arguments, 3 elves returned to our commander, one of whom was determined to punish the commander, but the other stopped her because she knew how valuable he was in the future auction. Besides, the commander was able to defeat Arden in a one-on-one battle, so they knew that they themselves will not be able to defeat him and were afraid. The elves assumed that he was one of the 7 scabbards of the kingdom, and they are the strongest warriors of Valois. And he is untouched, which is beneficial to them, because with his help they will be able to earn a lot of money at the auction with his help. Thinking about all this, the commander was drawn to sleep, and his subordinate, whose name was Azania, woke him up from sleep, shouting, "Captain." When he is fully awake, Isania said to him with a grin, "Captain, I came here to save you, and you were just sleeping." It turned out that Isania was the same prisoner as the captain, but he was able to get the keys. He explained this by being more beautiful than him and able to find a common language with the girls, which was enough to get the keys. After the release, the commander asked Isania, "So, you saved me without a plan?" To which he received the answer, "Isn't it obvious?" They let their guard down and were exhausted after a long hike. They think we're powerless too, but that's not true at all. Now we jump out of the wagon and start the operation. We have 13 soldiers trained by you, and there are 50 of them, but half of them are newcomers. While the commander and Azania were preparing to implement their plan, one of the elves on the street noticed that Azania had disappeared, and at the same moment they began to carry out their plan, they abruptly ran out of the room in which they were tied up and attacked the elves. Each fought them, and behold, the commander dropped the sword. Then every elf realized that this would end very badly for them. The elves, in order to stop the commander, decided to attack together, but he then felt that something was wrong, so he decided to try again the attack in which he almost got caught. But this time he was able to defeat the panicked elf, who shouted to others to catch his. The defeated elf fell to the ground, while the others looked at them in alarm. The commander, noticing that the remaining elves were afraid of him, decided to start bluffing and then completely run away. He began to say, "You saw enough blood, you really want to spill more? Just drop your weapons, and then we will not touch you." In his thoughts he thought that everything would be all right if he could escape, but suddenly the Knights of Helenwood appeared along with Ardina, who ordered them to be captured. The commander had already fought with her before, as a result of which he won, and she was badly injured, so she returned to the elven capital. But why is she here now? It seems that as soon as she learned that the commander was there, she advanced towards him. The situation is taking a negative turn for Yushin's team. That's the name of our commander. Then he began to think what he could do in order to save everyone. Then the red-haired elf told him not to do stupid things because he himself said that he did not want to shed more blood. Yushin decided that there was no way out of this situation, so he decided to voluntarily surrender so that his comrades would not suffer. Then the elf ordered the others to shackle him and finally told him, "Earlier you defeated me, but now we are in a completely different position. Rich people will pay a very good amount for you." Then Yushin knocked her down saying, "You finally show your true nature. After all elves think only about money. Where is your respect for a person who has already defeated you once?" The elf was hurt by this. She ordered to shut him up, and her servants got angry at the way Yushin talked to her. Isini shouted that he would definitely save Yushin, but then he received a blow to the stomach. The terrible elf who did this says, "Hey, you deceived the hind and started an escape. What to do?" Isanius, lying on the ground, tried to justify himself, referring to the fact that they had already surrendered, but the elf kicked him. At that moment, everyone trembled with the desire to save their comrade, but no one could take a step, because if they did, they would lose their bodies. The blades at their necks did not contribute to their courage. Yushin was angry at his helplessness. They tried to put Azania on the path of truth. By torture, the elf confessed to him that she was sorry because she liked him. Alas, she did not do anything about it. Then Yushin could not restrain himself and tried to run towards Azania. At that moment, they grabbed him by the t-shirt and torn. Then they saw a symbol in the form of a sign called the stigma. Ardina, that's the name of the red-haired elf, noticing this for some unknown reason, stopped the elf who tortured Azania, thereby saving his life. She said, "We have crossed the border, and this is the land of the Riverian elves. You have no right to do so. Once they enter our territory, they are now our property, and we must bring them to headquarters. But what are you trying to do now? Do you want to damage our precious commodity? Do you really want to go to court?" Hearing all this, Yushin was at a loss. He did not understand what was happening, but he understood that Ardina had saved Azania. Azania was released and Ardina took command. We went to the auction where it was only about how much the quality of the new slaves had improved, because the highlight of their auction was one of the 7 scabbards. It was full of elves. On the way to the auction, they were surrounded by Ardina and her knights, so there was no question of escaping. Yushin constantly got into various troubles, but he never thought that he would one day end up at an auction as a slave. Some by that time had already accepted their fate and even began to rejoice that if they were redeemed, they would have their own adult and beautiful elf. The auction was located in the center of Pamperlon. This city is considered the very center of the slave trade, from which, according to rumors, it was impossible to escape. The elves gave them good clothes to get more money for them. Yushin did not understand why Azani was so happy about this, referring to the fact that there was no common sense in this, because after all, they would become slaves after that, but he only thought that they would someday be able to meet again. They promised each other that someday they would definitely be able to meet again and clench their fists. After that, Yushin went with the elf to the auction, and Izani waited his turn. Sitting in anticipation, Azanius did not expect that the elves would suddenly burst into the room, both of whom were eager to try him out. One of them wanted to dissuade her friend because she could cripple him, but she was too overexcited, so she could not convince her. When she saw that what they were doing, she decided to join them. The elf decided to arrange a training session for him before sending him to a new master. The elf was a true professional in such training. She decides to speed up in these workouts. After the training of the first elf is over, the second elf continues her training with screams. After their training, the poor guy got very tired and was dragged to the auction. Meanwhile, at the auction, the amounts grew not by the hour, but by the minute. 13 million, 14 million, 30 million, 35 million. God, as good as he is, isn't that too much? Yushin did not understand what was happening, but the price for him just flew into the sky. For 45 million, Yushin did not understand how the currency in the elven countries worked, but he knew for sure that the amounts offered for him were simply prohibitive. At the very end of the auction, something happened that no one expected. Yushina bought Ardina. The slot was 50 million, and now they were already riding together in the same carriage. Yushin still did not understand why Ardina decided to buy it at auction, but after Ardina bought it, he got a slave collar around his neck, with which the owner of the slave could execute his slave at any time. During a trip in the same carriage with Arden, he found out that she also ransomed all his people, so soon he will be able to see them and can be calm for them. Then he asked to remove the slave's collar and instantly saw the look of the killer. Frightened, he changed his mind, but then abruptly grabbed Arden by the stomach. She was very embarrassed and immediately activated the collar to punish him. Ardina told him that she bought him for a reason, so that he would teach her little sister how to use mana. High elves and half-breeds are very good at managing their mana, but she told him she wasn't one of them. Ardina's voice was very hoarse when she said this. Then Yushin thought, well, apparently she's not lying, since she spent so much money on me. At the same moment, Yushin had a question and he asked Ardina, Stop, I have a question, but where do you get so much money from? Yushin began to talk to Ardina, saying, But why did you think that I would teach your little sister how to use mana? This is a strange request, even if I am a slave, but how can I train the enemy of my people? The answer he received was not very comforting, as she told him that Eren would not enter the battlefield until a couple of 100 years later. And so they met a friend of Ardina, whose name was Arona. At that moment, he had an extremely pleasant look in front of his eyes. Starlet asked who this slave was next to her, and she answered that she bought him at an auction in Pemberlon. She believed that she does not marry, but now she is buying herself a slave. Deviating from all this, she went up to Yushin and asked him, Mr. Slave, and what is your name? She heard his name. He called himself Yushin Gilliard. Then she immediately found out who he was, because she had heard a lot, and asked Ardina, Is this slave the one who defeated you last time? To which she received a positive answer. At the time when Ardina was 16 years old, she swore an oath of invincibility. Since then, no man has been able to defeat her in 300 battles and 20 years. And then you appeared, when suddenly Scarlet hugged Yushin, pressing him to her chest, and asked Ardina, Can I borrow this slave for one day? Having received an instant refusal, she asked her again, but her answer did not change. For a moment, it seems that Yushin was the happiest person. They continued on their way to the castle and finally met Ardena's sister. The same immediately stated, "I heard that you will teach me. It's such an honor for you." Yushin thought about how arrogant she was and that for now, he was not going to do anything until he got used to the new place. Ardena, realizing what was in Yushin's mind, said, "Well, she really good heart." Receiving the most cold answer, "Yeah, I see." Ardena said to her sister, whose name is Arona, "Sister, you can't use your mana. This person will teach you how to use it." Yushin said that he would need time for this, but Eren suddenly announced that they didn't have time at all, because in just 2 months, she would have her final exam at the academy. Yushin did not know what kind of academy it was, so he asked Ardena. She explained to him that the academy is a military academy, just like theirs, only high elves study there. Yushin immediately said, "God, and I have to train this mediocrity to use mana in 2 months. Wouldn't it be better to just drop out of the academy?" Calling Eren incompetent hit her hard, so she told her sister, "Hey, he's too cocky. He's defective. Put him back where you got him from. Did you really spend all your money on him? Don't you think it was a waste of time? He can't teach me anything. Why do you need this slave so much?" Arden covered her sister's mouth and said, "Arona, you got the final exam soon, so we have no choice. Plus he has human magic, and it is extremely strong and useful. It will be convenient to know the abilities of your enemies." Arona, seeing how her sister talks about this, embarrassedly agrees to this. Then, Arona decided to apologize to Yushin for her rudeness, but he replies without thinking, "It's okay, I'm not so stupid to be angry with an ill-mannered child." These words made Arona burst into tears. She screamed, "How? How I hate you? Defective. You're just a slave." But Yushin started stroking Eren's head and said that he would try to prepare her for the final exam. Only he has small needs for this, namely, a soft bed, delicious food, and clean clothes. He doesn't care was glad, but since he is a teacher, he would be more honest. They agreed to his terms. And so Yushin began his life as a slave. The beginning of his first lesson, he explains to her how everything works, namely, it takes a lot of effort for people to feel mana. Logically, if you teach you how to breathe mana, then you can use a mana blade. She interrupted Yushin and said, "Oh, really? Will everything be so simple? I'm Arden's sister and a high elf. I'll master the human technique in just a week." Yushin looked at her with contempt and thought, where did she have so much ambition and confidence? But then she said, "If you don't believe me, then check me." He, thinking about why he got the most annoying student, nevertheless decided to check her. Then he decided to check her with a branch. She swung her sword, but suddenly stumbled and accidentally fell. Yushin wanted to catch her, but accidentally grabbed her chest. She was embarrassed. But then he explained to her what she had done wrong. She was upset and decided to give up, saying that everyone still considers her an idiot and she will no longer train. She wished for a different life and does not want to be so useless, but alas, everything is not working out well for her. Then Yushin thought that he might have crossed the line and touched her to the quick. He usually always teased his students, because it is possible that her rudeness was not out of arrogance, but out of resentment. Maybe she just wanted some attention. Therefore, Yushin decides to support her, saying, "Only you decide what you are capable of, and what not, so don't dare give up. We're going to train here. I don't know how they refer to you at the academy. Here, you can forget about it. I'll treat you with respect, so pull yourself together." After Yushin's words of support, her mood rose greatly, and after that, she immediately cheered up. Yushin believes that even though everyone around her was underestimated, she is still a high elf who is pleased with beautiful words. Therefore, he should be a good teacher for her. Arona decided to trust Yushin, and as a sign of this, baring her chest, she hugged him. Yushin was shocked by what was happening, but later something even more unexpected happened. She asked to make her more mature. Yushin then only thought about this. What happened? My instincts got ahead of me. Why am I rejecting her? I don't mind doing this at all. Perhaps she will be ashamed that I rejected her. She needs to get out somehow. Yushin said to Eren, "Oh, I don't know much about elves." Eren started to cry, interrupted him and said, As expected, you don't want me." He tried to calm her down and said, "If you want this so much, then let's agree like this. If you become strong and pass the exam, then I may fall in love with you. Until then, I will support you no matter what happens. This will be our pact, okay? You don't think I still think you're worthless, do you?" Eren was moved and tried to wipe her tears. Then she promised that she would try hard in training. Yushin wanted to console her a little, but even because of such banal tears, she began to cry. Even though the elves captured Yushin himself and his people, perhaps they are not so different after all. Yushin told her after that to call him a master. when suddenly all the pride of Eren returned in a moment, which began to resist him, saying, "I am a high elf, and you are a man." But it was just a harmless joke, and she said in a sweet tone, "Teach me, master." And so began an equal relationship between a high elf and a human. Arona and Yushin decided to go shopping because Arona needed a training suit, the city in which they were almost no different from an ordinary human. But another thing is that in the city of elves, only men are slaves. While shopping, some elves noticed them together and started to spread strange rumors about them, but they ignored these rumors. After that, Eren went to the store to choose clothes, and Yushin stood and waited on the street. Yushin had all sorts of strange thoughts to get rid of. He hit his head against the wall. By that time, Eren had already finished shopping and immediately went out in a sports open suit. From that day on, Yushin taught Aron the art of swordsmanship. Aron very quickly absorbed all the knowledge of Yushin, which he taught her, so fast that sometimes even surprised Yushin. Arona definitely had talent, just like Ardina. There was another sparring where she was able to make Yushin sweat so as not to lose, but she was far from his level, although she quickly learned everything. Yushin was surprised by her open appearance, so he asked her about it, to which she replied that these are normal elf clothes, with which they breathe mana through the skin. Closed clothes can interfere with this, so they dress openly. But to all this, Yushin had another funny question. Aron can't breathe mana. Yushin thought that she had already learned enough about her sword, so it was time to move on to mana. Aron was happy that she could not even believe it. Yushin asked her to sit closer, after which he began to let mana into Aron's body. Due to the fact that she was an elf, she should have felt this mana. She tried to control the mana that Yushin passed through her herself. She succeeded immediately. Yushin was proud of her ability to concentrate on a task. Yushin taught an elf how to breathe mana for the first time in his life, but it turned out to be easy for him. Aron was talented. In her first attempt, she almost created 2 seeds, but because of this, she began to feel dizzy. She was so happy that she immediately asked him if she could make swords from mana, but unfortunately, Yushin said that it was too early for her, because it needs to make at least 3 seeds. She thought that she could learn it quickly, but Yushin said that she needed 6 months of hard training. Yushin himself could make 6 magic seeds. A raven, who was the vice leader of the Guild of Slave Traders, flew into the apartment of her elder sister Aron with a request to leave a review about the purchased slave. But in fact, the raven flew to talk to her about the secret. None of the Yushin people spoke about it, but it seems that some knights from the Order of Ardina began to guess, but she should not worry about it anymore, because the guild leader stuffed them with money. Because if people find out that a slave came from another world, it will be quite problematic. Such people always change the world. They can give people a new culture or vice versa, destroy everything that has been created. The raven says, "Ardina, you bought Yushin Gilliard. We can't even imagine what he can be capable of. Maybe he became a slave of the Elven Kingdom for a reason. I sent scouts to the human kingdoms." The next day, Ardina went to her father's office and asked to come in. She had a suspicion that something had happened. Her father told her that the kingdom sent a problematic request. People wanted to negotiate about a slave. Ironic, isn't it? It's the people who started the war, and now they need negotiations with us. So ironic. Father wanted to light a cigarette when suddenly Eren came into the room with a fright. He threw out the cigarette, and when asked if he smoked again, he answered her that he had quit a long time ago. The father continues the conversation. Nothing has been decided yet. Including Yushin, all noble knights are considered prisoners of war. Therefore, there is now a serious dispute. Aron heard this and asked, Master Yushin will leave us? But it was not yet known. If it were her father's will, he would have refused to negotiate, but he is not a politician. But with all this, he is also involved in it. It turns out that the master should stay with them, but this is also still unknown. In another room, the maid and Yushin met. The maid asked Yushin how his first day went, to which he replied that he was tied up and treated rudely. But the maid understood everything wrong. She began to admire Arden even more, believing that she was a goddess on the field, and the same in bed. The maid was about to pounce on Yushin, when suddenly Arden came in and asked to be left alone. She came to thank him for her younger sister, who has changed a lot thanks to Yushin. Before meeting Yushin, she was constantly without motivation and energy, but after her mood changed a lot, although she did not learn much. So thanks, Ardina asked. But Yushin, what about you? Yushin asked her what she was talking about, and she said, well, food, clothes, room, and stuff. How do you live with elves? Do you miss people? Aron began to please her father, so Yushin is no longer an ordinary slave. Yushin was embarrassed by such praise, but he liked it. He told Ardona that he wondered how his people were doing there, because he lives such a quiet life. What if they suffer without him? Ardona told him that the higher ranks don't harm slaves, so if he's worried, he can ask. The daughter of the Sun Thunder's family wants to come to them. Ardone asked if everything goes well, and even if you are a slave, do you want to stay and live here further? Ardena's eyes showed that she was very embarrassed. Yushin said that it would even be right because he has such a cute student and his mistress, the most beautiful woman on the planet. Why would he then leave there? By saying this, he embarrassed Arden even more. She was just happy about it. The next day, the daughter of the Santander's family arrived and was escorted through the palace. Then she asked where the master was, and she was led to him in the living room where he was waiting for her, but she said that she would go on herself. The daughter of the Santander's family has not been visiting them for a long time, but since she is now on vacation at the academy, she needs to visit all the nearest families for a welcome visit. But the most important thing is that she wanted to personally meet the famous Arden warrior. If she really is that strong, I need her to respect even her slaves. She thought, I wonder what kind of slaves she has? Are they courageous and elegant? While this slave was staring at the ass of one Nuna, but he was caught and asked for male help, so he was told that it was time to stop messing around and told to go with them. The daughter of the Santander's family noticed a human slave, thought it might be this man, but immediately thought that he was too low level. She was already expected. She says, I came for a welcome visit on behalf of my family. Sir, was it? Suddenly, in the face of Father Ardone, Ardina burst into tears to puzzle the guest. She began to panic, thinking that she had done something wrong. At the same time, Ardone was diligently sparring, but during the sparring, she slipped and fell to the ground. Ardone says that her whole body hurts and asks the master to give her a massage, but he refuses her, but allows her to rest a little. She tells me to take off my shoes and just lie down. And he begins to give her a massage, after which he begins to talk with him about the rumors that were spread about him. Some said that the maids scolded him. It is said that he stared at the maid, and in return for their help, they agreed to let him touch them or even sit down. Ardone, speaking about this, said that Yushin could touch her. In the room with her father, a visitor from the Santander family was shocked by the change in the mood of this family. At first, she thought that they had problems, but her father told her about the youngest daughter who was training in the yard with her master. She went outside to see who her master was, but she found Yushin, who was doing a massage to Ardone, and the guest's fantasy was shaken. She sharply attacked them with a question of what they were doing in broad daylight in the yard. Immediately after that, she introduced herself like this. I'm a Reticia Santanders, a classmate of Ardone and a member of the Santanders family. Then Yushin realized that this was the girl about whose arrival he was warned. She flew in the clouds at all and asked Ardone, Ardone, seriously, I can't understand. Do you have no shame at all? And you are a slave. How dare you touch the body of an elf? You have something to say in your excuse. Hey, slave, where are you staring? She couldn't understand how a slave could become her master, to which she replied that he may look stupid, but in fact he is not like that, he is very cool. Her master actually won the battle against the Ani *. Ani is Ardone's older sister. Then she realized that those rumors that spoke about the person who defeated Ardina were about Yushin. But she did not understand why he behaved this way, because she represented the winner of Ardina as an intelligent person or a strong knight, but for some reason he turned out to be a man who acted like a jerk. How could such a moron defeat Ardina? Thought Reticia Santanders. Yushin offered Reticia's help because she couldn't climb up to them, then she thought that his manners weren't so bad. Yushin decided to joke, you have beautiful hands. I would like to be in them forever. After he helped her climb up, Ardone became angry that he did not let go of her hand and said that maybe he would finally let her go. At the same time, Reticia thanked him for his help. Yushin turned to Reticia. I heard that you treat my people very well. How are they doing there? I think they suffer a lot in a foreign land, but nothing lasts forever, alas. Tears come. Reticia thought what was happening with the atmosphere around. Everything was fine with his people, but why did he start crying? Then she said that they do not abuse their slaves in any way, to be honest. They eat and live too well. That's how she could put it. Let's move on to Azania. Some time has passed since his arrival there, but he is still embarrassed to find his room. Now their troops are fighting monsters. Well, their warriors have always been famous for hunting monsters, so it's quite normal, and they treat us well. In fact, even too good. They were all given private rooms, delicious food, and beautiful elves there. Is he really a slave? The lady secretary of the Santanders often takes me to my room and often helps me when I get lost. The secretary hinted to him that she wanted to rest with him, saying that she had a lot of free time and she had nothing to do. Then Azania suggested that she stay with him and relax. Of course, she agreed to this offer. Azania likes that she answers with such enthusiasm. She asked Azania to wipe her. After that, they started playing on the bed. After a while, they stopped playing, but the elf liked it so much that she suggested Azania repeat it at night. Since then, she had no plans. Yushin thought that the reticence was telling the truth. A couple of days later, Yushin, along with Ardone and Ardone, rode in the same wagon, clinging to each other since the wagon was intended for two. The reason why the three of them went in a double wagon was because Yushin asked Ratisha to visit his people. She happily invited Yushin to her place. Ardena then decided to greet the Santander's family. Ardena looked after Yushin more, but the problem was that Aron wanted to go with them. Yushin in the hangar was unhappy, because Aron asked him if he took the opportunity to pat them because of the tightness, but he told her reply that if she had not said that she also wanted to go with them, then the wagon would not have been so crowded. Aron was then embarrassed and said that she did not know that the wagon would be so crowded. Aron says, even Ardeen is uncomfortable, but she said that she was fine. Aron was talking nonsense the whole trip. Ardena and Yushin thought at the same time, God, what child she is. Despite this, Yushin liked to sit between the two of them. It was good, but scary. Yushin and Aron decided to tease Ardena. They clung to each other so that Ardena would become jealous of Yushin. But she pretended that she didn't care about it. Then Aron told Yushin that Ardena bought him for 50 million, which she set aside for the wedding. Therefore, he's far from being an ordinary slave, but very expensive. Yushin really liked being in the company of two sisters. And then came the moment of their arrival at the castle of Ratisha. There was a completely different atmosphere, and the castle had an extremely strange shape. One could even say that this is already a palace and not some kind of castle. At the entrance to the castle, they were met by two maids who greeted them and said that they had been waiting for them for a long time. The maids addressed the goddess of the battlefield Ardena, Miss Aron and Mr. Yushina with the words, "The master ordered to show you the castle." But Ardone, together with Aron, decided to first greet Lord Santander's. The elf maid said that she would lead them to him. Yushin stayed with the animal girl, who immediately after leaving, hugged Yushin's hand and said, "I will be your assistant, Yushin Appa." Yushin was surprised because it was the first time he had seen Beastman, but suddenly he remembered that Aron had asked him not to stare at other girls. Speaking of various things, Yushin, together with the animal girl, went to the slave rooms, when suddenly the animal girl, pointing to one of the rooms, said that she was Mr. Azania. Yushin was delighted and asked should he then go to him. But suddenly they heard some scream from Azania's room. Then the animal girl immediately stopped Yushin and forbade him to enter there, grabbing his hand. Yushin did not understand what was happening and was very worried. So he tried to escape from the hands of the animal girl and to enter the room, but the animal girl told him that if he entered there now, he would be shocked by what he saw. Then he thought that Renisha had deceived him and Azania was now being tortured in that room. He escaped from the hands of the animal girl and burst into the room, where he found Azania doing an indecent occupation with the maid of this house. The maid, frightened, ran out of the room, and later Azania got angry with Yushin, referring to the fact that he also had a personal life that Yushin did not care about. But later he said that he was not alone there and offered to go meet the others because they would also be happy to meet Yushin. When they met, they began to talk about what they do at normal times, namely, they train soldiers there. Sometimes they go to fight monsters. But then Yushin thought about it. They don't suffer for no reason, because still they won't buy slaves who will live just like that. Still, my soldiers are good fighters against monsters, but that's not the point right now. Thinking about this, Yushin said, "You have hot girls here who get along very well with you. But what about me? I'm the captain and you left me." At that moment, one maid came and hugged one of the guys. It turned out that they met. Then everyone started showing off their achievements with the girls. Hearing all this, Yushin's worries instantly disappeared. Azania said that he should not have worried about them at all, because they now have a good life. They began to say that all of this was not without reason, because if they leave them, they will fall under the tribunal. After all the conversation, they went about their business. Yushin was already preparing to leave with his sisters. The sister hurried Yushin, saying that it was already quite late. If they did not hurry, they would be late. Doesn't Yushin know that it's rude to keep women waiting? Then Ardena grabbed Yushin's hand and told him to go faster. Yushin agreed with her and they went together. Along the way, Aron decided to offer Yushin a little rest, during which Yushin gave Aron a drink that would help her progress faster, but she did not even know that such drinks existed. Then Yushin revealed that he also drank such a drink when he trained. He thinks he did a good job of making this drink. Then Aron asked Yushin, "Will this drink work even with elves?" To which she received the answer, "Of course, in fact, we are more alike than you think, so everything will be fine." Aron interrupted Yushin and asked, "Speaking of elves, how do you feel when you know such a beauty as me?" Yushin ignored her question, saying that she was crazy, after which Aron apologized but said that he could at least say that she was beautiful. Then Yushin said, "But you are really beautiful, very beautiful. Aron is beautiful. In fact, there are so many beautiful girls here like Aron." Saying this, Yushin began to embarrass Aron greatly, so she asked him to stop mentioning her name. Yushin mentioned that he could have a beautiful bride, but he did not marry. This greatly surprised Aron, namely that her master had a woman, that he told her that it was a relationship of convenience. Aron, after these words, did not hear Yushin because she went into thoughts. She thought, God, no. If she was beautiful too, then the master, does he really miss her? That he must train. What would it be? If he chooses between me and his bride, is there any chance that the master will choose me? Thinking about this, Ardougne called her sister and said that they needed to talk. During the conversation, she told her that a delegation of Valois would visit them soon, but these were other elves and not those that they talked about with their father. It was the Count Roxfield. Then Aron wanted to ask, what's the problem? Father doesn't want negotiations. Ardougne told her that no, she just didn't know how it could end. Simply because they offered twice the price for Yushin, namely 100 billion coins. It was certainly a large amount, but her father was simply already tired of all the negotiations, so she did not know what would happen in the future. But Aron had already decided that she would never give up the master. She even understood that it was selfish, but did not want to let him go because if he left, he would never return. So she asked her sister if she could interfere in any way. She asked this and continued to say, we must not let the master go under any circumstances. I trained so hard. I did everything you asked, and everything the teacher said. My skills have improved a lot. Please, do you hear me? But Ardougne, having heard all of this, told her sister that she was powerless in this situation because the right of choice remains with Yushin. Aron said, then why are you telling me all this? If only the opinion of the master decides, what is the point of me knowing about this? Ardougne replied to her sister, I'm sorry, Aron, but you'll have to keep it a secret. I know that Yushin is very dear to you. It just felt right to tell you about it. Damn, I feel like I betrayed you. Aron said to her sister, it's all right, sister. There's nothing we can do here. So let's hope the master's decision. What can we do? Nothing at all. It's inevitable. I am tired, so I'll go and rest at my place. While saying all this, Aron thought only that she did not want to let the master go. She changed thanks to her master. The master promised her to hug her if she succeeded, but she still didn't have time. He couldn't leave now. If his father or sister can't keep him, then Aron will have no choice. She will do it. After talking with her sister, Aron decided to go to her master, who did not expect her to come at such a late hour. Master Yushin let her in, and she had already changed her clothes. She went in and sat down with Yushin on the bed and started talking about his daughter-in-law, asked if she was waiting for him. Having heard that she might be waiting for him, she still did not give up, and I decided to confess by throwing off my extra clothes. She told Yushin that she liked him. She hoped that Yushin would not leave her. Yushin did not understand what was happening because she usually behaved just like a restless child, but now everything is different. She has turned into a real woman. Aron said that she could satisfy his desires, she could do whatever he wants, even if this is her first attempt, and she herself hoped only that he would leave her. Yushin could not resist such a temptation and grabbed her. Aron asked the master to touch her with his lips, then he could not restrain himself and did it. The master embarrassed Aron and called her cute. In the eyes of Yushin, Aron turned into a hungry succubus who grabbed the bait and ate it. It was very difficult for him now to understand that she was an elf. They began to play with each other. Sometimes during the game, it was hard for her to breathe. She even clung to Yushin with her hands and squeezed his legs with all her might. Aron really liked the game and asked to start playing it harder to get more enjoyment from their games. He realized that in such games, the elves were on a completely different level. Yushin filled her with a little strange compliments. But in the end, he said that Aron was much more beautiful than his bride. After such a compliment, Aron was happy that she didn't even believe what she heard at first. Later, the master decided to punish her because she did not believe her master's words that she was more beautiful than his sister-in-law. The punishment was such that she could not put her hands down. On this, their fourth game training ended. It ended with the fact that Aron gave up. After that, the fifth round of their games began, in which the Aron opened the gate, into which Yushin enters and moves in search of an end. Aron asked her master where he got so much experience in such games, to which he replied that he learned to play from books, which caused Aron to laugh and angered Yushin. Then he said, "Do you want to get hit in the neck? Why are you laughing over your master?" But after that, Aron said that she also learned to play it from books, so since they are both new to it, they should learn from each other. It looked like they were a young couple. They continued to play and enjoyed this process. Charm and miniature, their contact made Yushin more willing to play. Their bodies moved in rhythm as if they were so tightly connected that they became one. Aron was covered in sweat from this game.